You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
This is TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network, a weekly audio safari that features the newest in paranormal discoveries while highlighting the latest and not to be missed TruthFunder.com projects. For truth seekers and true believers, this week's TruthFunders starts now.
Greetings, bonjour, hola, welcome, and hello. This is the live TruthFunders Radio show on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Art Webb. I am your host for this weekly look at TruthFunders.com and everything that is paranormal, metaphysical, universal, and essentially good. It is about the light here, and as always, I'm joined by the CEO and founder of TruthFunders.com. His name is Mark Schwartz. And Mark, it is such a pleasantry to be joined by you on this particular live episode of TruthFunders here on IRN.
Quite, isn't it? Quite.
Yes, it's a joyous occasion. It's a reunion of sorts that I just look forward to on a weekly basis.
It is. You know, I look forward to speaking with you as well, Art. I'm always looking forward to speaking with the guests too. We always have.
Wait,
some
hold
really...
on. I want to tell you a brief story here, very quickly.
Go for it.
If you remember, a couple weeks ago, we had Holly on the show or Heidi was her name, rather, not Holly.
Yeah, Heidi Hollis.
Heidi Hollis. She makes her name very difficult to remember when it's Heidi Hollis. You could easily see where I could get Holly out of those two. But I digress. Yes, I digress. After we did that episode with her, she reached out, if you remember, and we had talked further off the show, kind of offline, about the sleep paralysis and sleep study stuff that we were talking about during that episode.
Yeah, so what did she do? So she wrote to us, because we both had some crazy dreams, but you have some really crazy, intense sleep nightmare stuff.
Sleep
so
disorder stuff, right?
What is she doing right now? What is it? A study?
She's working with a production company that is involved in putting together a new television show about people with sleeping problems, such as myself, that sleepwalk or talk in their sleep or this, that, the other thing. So I actually just this past week did an interview with the production company that is putting together this television show, and I might be featured on one of their episodes in discussing it. So that's kind of a cool development to have come from a guest here we've had on TruthFunders. I wanted to mention that and say thank you to Heidi Hollis for hooking me up with that. And maybe I they might hook me up like in my own home to some kind of sleep study and some nodes and who knows what. We might be able to get to the bottom of some of this. So I'll keep you updated.
So what was the interview like? Did they was it a phone interview?
It was over Skype. It was a Skype interview. It was over Skype, and they just it was a conversation really, and a lot of basic questions back and forth about what kinds of things I regularly suffer from, and what the kinds of things like me, literally in my sleep, getting up and driving to get food and waking up halfway through there and coming home being like...
Yeah, so for the audience that doesn't know, what happened? Tell us a couple of stories about you and your crazy sleep disorder, I suppose.
Well, so far, I guess the most extreme of events that have taken place was, I don't know, in the middle of the night, early in the morning at some point, and I, in my sleep, decided that I needed to go pick up some food from Del Taco because my wife, Del Taco is like a fast food restaurant here in Southern California, and in my sleep, my wife had asked me to go pick up Del Taco, and I was determined. I woke up and I grabbed my key. I didn't wake up. I have no memory of this, but apparently I got my keys. I went down to my car, and she was none the wiser. She thought I was awake because I was coherently speaking with her and telling her I had to go get Del Taco. It was just, a necessary thing. So she was like, whatever, go ahead and go. And I didn't wake up until I was halfway through the drive-thru, and I woke up and I went, what the hell am I doing here? And it was probably one of the scariest things.
So you really slept, you woke up and you were on the road. Yeah,
I woke up and I was in the drive-thru.
You could have killed somebody. You could have killed yourself.
I could have killed anybody. I had already arrived at the drive-thru. It was, and I do this on a regular basis. I don't get out in the car and drive. That's the only time that's ever happened. But I do get up and walk around, and I don't have any memory of any of it. So this is something that we've been discussing, wanting to get me involved with some kind of sleep study for a while, just to see what this is coming from, and it looks like we might be able to get some help, as a result of this television show. So we'll see what happens.
Well, that's great. And then, so does Heidi look at it from a paranormal point of view, or is it just
we definitely, and as a matter of fact, during the Skype interview, we definitely discussed some of the more paranormal aspects that we had talked about on the episode we did with Heidi, such as the secret war or whatever that's going on in our sleep. I don't know if you remember. That was something she had mentioned. Course. Yeah. So that definitely came up in the Skype interview, and I was like, look, that could be the case. I mean, there's examples of times where my wife has told me that we have, I've been asleep and I've been discussing like robotics with her and like very detailed things about robotics that I personally in no way, shape, or form could have any knowledge of because I just don't know math. And she said I was, things that almost scared her that they were so specific and detailed about like mathematics and robotics. So who knows? I couldn't tell you. I wish I could, but I can't. So maybe one day I'll be able to.
That's great, and I think we'll probably get Heidi back on the show to kind of talk a little bit more about this in a few weeks. And, something else that came from the show is that Eli Donnelly, who has his own podcast and radio show, he has invited you and I, Art, to be guests on his show in about, I think it's the end of this month, maybe 2 weeks from now. So we're going to be on Eli's show, and we'll let everybody know when that's on. So if you can't get enough of us on the Inception Radio Network, which has all sorts of great shows, you can also listen to us over there being interviewed, because usually we're the ones doing the interview. It's kind of fun when the tables are turned and we're the ones getting interviewed. And on that note...
Yeah, it's not as much work for certain.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something that we have going on today is our guest today is actually a host on the Inception Radio Network, and his name is Professor Erick Williams. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Erick, but what's really great about Erick, too, is we originally had Erick back on the show, if you've listened to the show. Maybe it was... I can hear your blinker going on, Art. Are you driving right now?
I'm in the car right now.
You're in your mobile office?
I'm remotely broadcasting the show today. I don't know about this blinker because it's illegal to not use the blinker, but it's also distracting on the air. So watch this. Hold on, watch this. You keep talking. I'm gonna mute the mic.
All right, sounds great. So Erick, he was on our show. I guess it was maybe 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and he had a project, an ESP project that he was doing on TruthFunders. And so it's kind of neat because in that time, Erick has gotten really into the paranormal, and he has created a show with Inception Radio Network. He got together with them, and he started something very, very cool called Psychology's Outer Limits, and it's Sunday nights at 7 p.m. on the Inception Radio Network. So Erick Williams is a full-time professor of psychology. He's a family man and imaginative explorer. He was an army brat, and Erick was uprooted from Europe during his early adolescent years to face the cultural shock of East Coast pride exhibited in the American Northeast. It was during that time that Erick cultivated his interest in deciphering the human psyche. Professor Erick has earned a BA Psychology at the University of Maryland, MA, Experimental Psychology Hood College, and MS Counseling at McDaniels College. Erick has devoted his life to providing guidance to those in need and to the curious mind. His love of new technology and the arts has allowed him to meld the best of academia with pure science fiction to push boundaries beyond psychology's outer limits. And that's a little bit about Erick. And also when I bring Erick on the show, which I'll do in just about 5 seconds, I'm hoping we can talk a little bit, Art, about all the stuff that you're going through with your crazy dreams and stuff going on in your mind, because it would be great to have a psychological point of view from a professor himself. So without further ado, Erick, how are you doing today? Erick, are you there?
I'm here.
All right.
Hello,
a little delay
Art.
There.
Hello, Mark.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm on the East Coast. I'm 3,500 miles away, I guess.
Yeah, you're 3 hours behind me, so... or in front of me, I should say.
I was listening to Art talk about sleepwalking, and I'm glad that I can talk about that for a moment. we have two kinds of things we can do when we're technically, asleep. We can dream, and when we're dreaming, we're barely asleep. Right now, when we're wide awake and our brains are going 100 miles an hour, where our brain is in what we call they're making beta waves. They're pretty busy. And as we get drowsy, they make alpha waves. And as we just fall off to sleep, we make theta waves, theta 1. And sometimes you'll actually see some of your dreams like in your room. They're called hypnagogic images. Now, when a person has a nightmare, they're dreaming. And one way you can test for that is you can ask them when they wake up, what happened? And they'll say, I dreamed the green monsters were chasing me. But there's a really important thing about dreaming, which is called REM sleep, rapid eye movement, because your eyes move. In REM sleep, voluntary muscle movement is turned off. Otherwise, you would act out your dream in your bed. So if you were dreaming you were fighting or doing something active, you would really thrash your poor partner. So voluntary muscle
Eric,
movement.
Is that why we have sleep paralysis? Are we in the deep REM sleep and suddenly wake up, and we wake up in the middle of that cycle?
REM sleep is light sleep, and you wake up a little too soon, and you're waiting for your voluntary muscle movements to come on. It may seem like you're in that state for a long time, but it's usually very brief.
Well, the thing about my particular case is that I am the type of person that I don't ever recollect any of my dreams, any of the stuff that I experience. Zero recollection of. 0% of the time. There's never 100% of the time I do not remember anything. And the other thing is that when I do fall asleep, I lay my head down on a pillow and I'm out in less than 60 seconds. I can fall asleep very quickly. And what happens is I stumble into this very, very, very deep state, and I don't go through the ebbs and flows of the normal sleep cycle where you kind of go up and then you go down into REM and then you come up and then you kind of go back down. I go down and then I stay deeply down and I don't come back up until
that's where the sleepwalking. That's where the sleepwalking occurs, in our deepest sleep, delta wave. Right. And one of the reasons you can tell is that in delta wave sleep, you can move your arms and legs. So if somebody's up and walking around, we know they're not dreaming. That they're sleepwalking, and you can talk and you can do fairly complicated behaviors. It's fairly unusual in adults. So anyway, and you were mentioning earlier that there could be a paranormal explanation. So I wanted to chime in with the alternative explanation is that it's simply sleepwalking. Everybody dreams, but we don't really have a mechanism to move dreams into long-term memory unless they were particularly interesting dreams. You might recall those. So who knows why you're sleepwalking, but we do know that you're doing it from the very deepest sleep, delta wave, and you're not dreaming.
Interesting. Well, thanks for your perspective on that. Now let's talk a little bit about the reason you're here. And Mark, I'll let you talk about the Truth Funders project a little bit and kind of update everyone on what we have to say about that. Is Mark there? Mark sometimes likes to just disappear.
I am here.
Okay. Jesus.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on today, Eric, is, we can talk about all sorts of amazing, wonderful things, specifically about the paranormal, but you have a brand new show that's on, and so I was curious about your show, and it's kind of interesting because in some ways, and I won't take credit for this by any means, but it is sort of a spin-off of Truth Funders, where you started your project here, and we sort of got connected into the vibe, and you connected to MJ and the whole crew at Inception Radio after that. So it's really cool to see the connection of Truth Funders and starting a project there sort of lead to you reaching out to everybody and getting your own incredible show. So how do you feel about that? And also, can you tell us a little bit about your show and some of the topics that you have discussed, or one of your favorite shows so far?
Okay. Well, it is a spinoff of Truth Funders because it wouldn't have happened had I not bumped into Truth Funders. And
I'll be expecting my royalty checks at any time. Thank you.
As soon as I get mine, I will send you your cut. I did a small project on TruthFunders, and we actually got started on that. It's an ESP project. It's based on matching people up by similarity. But that led me to want to talk more about psychology. To me, if you blew up two balloons and you marked one paranormal and you marked one psychology and you touched them together, that's where I want to be, is at that point. I want to be at the bleeding edge of psychology, and yet the show that I do, Psychology's Outer Limits, is not a paranormal show, but we dabble in it. It's a show with a lot of segments. We cover news, we cover some weird stuff. We always cover a little bit of paranormal psych. And then we usually have a topic, for the day. Like this coming Sunday before you guys are on, we're going to talk about interpersonal attraction. My favorite show so far was the one where we had a lot of people in the chat room. We had people calling in. I give away a prize every week. If someone calls in, the first person to call in gets a prize. So that's been kind of fun.
We should do that. We should do some TruthFunders swag.
There you go. And Sky has a question. What can it mean when a person
let's give away a
have
prize.
many lucid dreams? Are they? No, you're not dreaming in the third person. You're. It's almost like if I use my balloon analogy again. If your dream is a balloon, okay, then we could blow another balloon outside of that, which is your consciousness, and then the balloon inside is your dream. And I recently myself, I had a dream, and it wasn't a pleasant dream at all. And towards the end of the dream, I suddenly realized I was dreaming. And I thought, well, this is cool. I'll just do whatever the hell I want. So I started doing weird things in the dream, but that actually kind of ended the dream. I guess it took the fun out of it. But you could think of it as in the third person, but what's really happening is that you're starting to wake up. And consciousness, waking consciousness, alert consciousness is seeping into your dream. But some people are really good at having lucid dreams. They work really hard at it. And that's my explanation.
So they work really hard at it. Do you think that there's anybody that, when they say they're having out-of-body experiences, is this something that's real, or is this just like lucid dreaming?
Too. I think astral projection also falls. Sorry to interrupt you, Mark, but astral projection also falls into that realm as well. I mean, people say they can, willingly astrally project, I guess would be the word, and that's something it's a twilight state, right when you're falling asleep. No, am I incorrect about that? I need to bone up on my astral projection.
Well, provided the person that's relating an incident like that is reliable, and sometimes people aren't, but some are. That's kind of what I'm interested in. That's kind of where the two balloons touch. On the one hand, we could say you're just
so you're saying if we had a Venn diagram and you would, the two circles come together and there's that little intertwining section right in the middle there, that's where
they touch. It's where there could be multiple explanations for the same phenomena. So a person could be having a lucid dream. They could be having an out-of-body experience. I don't know how anyone could say that a person's not having an out-of-body experience because, as usual, we lack evidence, which is why I call myself the hopeful skeptic. Someone should start a radio show called The Hopeful Skeptic. You should just change the name of your show. Just change
or you can have the Hopeful Skeptic Corner, the last 15 minutes of your show. But it's interesting, and I like that you approach things from a scientific perspective. I mean, my entire life I've approached things from a scientific perspective, but I've also witnessed and seen strange things that are bizarre that I can't explain. Have you, Eric, ever seen something that was beyond your explanation that you could not explain via science or psychology? Because you're obviously interested in the paranormal. There's somehow you got really intrigued by it, and your show is on the Paranormal Network. So was there that experience for you where something happened or that you saw something that you couldn't explain?
I think the closest experience I've ever had is that in my late teens through my 20s, I was very involved in martial arts, and it was a Korean form. And you could only get to a third-degree black belt here. And then you either had to go to Korea or they had to come here. And they had these monks come here once in a while. And these guys were at the top. They were 14th degree black belts. And they were like 150 years old. And they did things that defied physics and defied explanation. And, I'm
Wait, 150 years old? 150?
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
They were probably in their 80s. They were probably in their 80s, little tiny guys. And, I never stopped thinking about how did they do these things? These things defy physiology. They defy, physics. But some of the things we talked about in that particular form of martial arts was that there was an element of paranormal at a certain level, that these monks could do things that, you simply couldn't explain unless you were willing to believe in the paranormal. So that was probably my only live experience, is when I saw some pretty bizarre things.
Like what exactly?
Well, our studio had really tall ceilings, like 14 feet tall. And these guys were like 5 feet tall at the most, and they were in their 80s. And what we did one time was we glued a little red rubber ball on the ceiling, okay? And they could go up there and kick it with their foot.
Wow.
And, I know there are people that can get really good at athletics, but they can't do that. They can also slow their heartbeats down to ridiculous rates, like one time every 30 seconds.
That sounds like a mind over matter situation, too.
Which is
the power of the brain really taking over.
And that's precisely right. And see, my belief is that some of these paranormal things we're going to find out we can do, and it's not going to matter if the explanation is scientific or paranormal. I believe ESP is possible. We just got to figure it out.
And the power of consciousness, the power of the brain. Because we've locked into a mere percentage of what we really are capable of doing. Well, if we harness that kind of control.
So there's actually a lot of questions coming in from the chat room. So I'm going to read them. I'm going to get to all the questions that are on there. Analog, your question will be coming up next. But first, I'm going to go out to Droopy. He'd like to know, is there a link between dreaming and future events? He has dreams at times. I have dreams, and at times they come to fruition sometimes. Maybe he's related to Nostradamus. That's a little side joke he put out there. But so is there, in your study of psychology, do they ever talk about, or has there ever been a case recorded where someone can have a dream and it somehow tells the future?
Well, not reliably, but here's, some people seem to have precognition, but it's never happened in a lab. But there are people that we believe. So, we scratch our heads, and, we're very bound to the scientific method. Now, there's another part of this, okay? People sometimes forget that their brain is 100 billion computers working at the same time. And it is an amazing computer, and it can take little bits of data and it can do really accurate predictions. So it could be that all the little pieces are in there and the prediction seems like precognition, but it's nothing more than the brain doing things that we just can't understand. Now, that leaves the other answer, that it's simply precognition, and I just simply don't know. Precognition is, in the 60s and 70s was tested in the lab, but they never got reliable results. And as I've said,
is that what you're trying to do with your TruthFunders project? Is a little bit of that?
I'm actually trying something easier. I'm just trying to see if people can do what we might call thought transfer. Look at only 5 images, and They look at an image, and the other person writes it down. So by chance, we would expect 20%. We did my colleague and I did this semester with a small group, and we really only got around the 20% number. None of our students demonstrated any ability, but that was what we were really doing.
Yeah, but they're also college kids, and they're probably smoking tons of weed.
Exactly.
I'm just joking.
You don't have to be in college to smoke tons of weed. I'll tell you that right now.
It was a very tiny sample. It was not scientific. What we were really doing was figuring out, when we really run this experiment, what sort of problems we're going to run into. So it was more of a test. The students enjoyed it, and students are very interested in the paranormal. And
I'm sure
the questions you ask me here, I get asked in class every semester.
Oh, I have no doubt about that.
I enjoy answering them.
So I think Art is breaking up a little bit there, but there's another question that I have for you.
Ring in the circle of questions.
No,
so Art, you're breaking up a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and ask this question, Eric. This is from Analog in the chat room. He wants to know, can Professor Erick elaborate on hypnagogic experiences?
Hypnagogic, you can have hypnagogic vision. You can have hypnagogic auditory. As you're falling asleep, some of your dream is also in your consciousness, your waking consciousness. Again, there's that little tiny area when you slip from alpha waves to theta waves and you start to dream. But you can still be a tiny, tiny bit awake. You know how sometimes just as you're falling asleep, your body jerks really hard?
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing, only those are called hypnagogic or hypnagogic, however you want to pronounce it.
TruthFunders Radio.
TruthFunders was started as a place to shine a spotlight on paranormal projects. Other big-name crowdfunding sites bury paranormal projects that contain UFO, ghosts, Bigfoot, research, documentaries, books, clothes, movies, and more. At TruthFunders, we invite people to not just listen to our show, but interact and do something about it. You can create a project. Yes, you, listening to the radio right now, you can make a difference. Stop dreaming and take action at www.truthfunders.com. Click Create a Project and submit your idea. Or browse the other paranormal initiatives that other brave souls have put their energy into. Support them as they reach into their creative spirit and turn their passion into progress. Each donation you will make, you will receive something in return. From a book to a DVD to a Roswell I-beam and plenty more. You don't have the scratch to donate? Fine. Share anywhere you can, from Facebook to Twitter, or blog about it. That's free, and it helps support a community of people that not only want, but need to get the word out. We are not alone. We are a community. We need to believe in each other as much as we believe that there's more to life than meets the eye. Help support our project on TruthFunders, or create your own today at www.truthfunders.com.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free. You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
Listeners, this is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic. Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. Did you miss a show? Well, guess what? You can check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube and search Inception Radio Network to listen to the latest archives of all the shows on IRN. Another way to listen to us anywhere, anytime. For IRN, this is MJ. And oh yeah, right. Remember to subscribe too. Hit the subscribe button.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
Welcome back to TruthFunders live on the Inception Radio Network. I guess we had some connectivity issues going into the break there, and MJ smartly and rightfully so just kind of fired off the break. But we're back now, and you were just saying there's some interesting things going on in the chat room. What are you seeing there that's catching your eye?
Well, they're talking about analog hole, and someone else was talking about AI. And it reminds me of an article I read this week about some scientists that connected 4 rat brains together.
I read that same article, as a matter of fact. That is an interesting thing to have happened.
And analog hole, for analog hole, the reason they call it a cortical processor is because the cortex of your brain is the very outer part of your brain, and that's where we do our thinking. So what they do with these organic computers is they train them to make kind of go, no-go decisions. And where that would really be, a good application for that would be the military, because AI software has a hard time looking at aircraft and determining, they have an easy time determining if they're friendly. They have a harder time determining if they're unfriendly, which is why we shot down an Iranian airliner once. But if we use something organic like brains, they might do better at making those go, no-go decisions because there's just more processing.
Yeah, AI is really something that's going to be at the forefront of conversation here within the next few years. Do you talk about that much on your show, the whole concept and what we're looking at with that?
Not yet, but I'm going to make a note to. I think it's a great idea.
What are some of your thoughts on where we're going with that?
With AI?
Yes.
Well, my first thought is that we have Stephen Hawking who doesn't like it. He's afraid that we're actually going to develop sentient robots, for lack of a better word, that are going to enslave us, which is, to me, and I'm a big fan of him. He's about one of the brightest people on the planet, but they're still running lines of code. I mean, they're just code. when a computer can do something original, that will scare me. But right now, it can only output a product of its inputs. But when you connect, for example, 4 rat brains together, you don't know what all the inputs are. So you might get an original output. So I'm really fascinated by this. I mean,
yeah,
the idea
it's scary in a lot of ways, I think, too, because of just the whole conversation of what happens when computers become self-aware and smarter than us. I mean, it's a conversation we're seeing happening in Hollywood quite a bit with movies, more so than anything lately, especially with the Avengers movie that came out earlier this summer. And AI has been everywhere lately in films, it seems. So it's definitely something that's on the human subconscious. I think because it's being reflected back in our entertainment, and it's interesting to kind of see that happening, because it is going to be the next big conversation, I think, in human ethics and where we're going as a society. Well,
I think first, before we get to full AI, and way before we get to sentient machines, we're going to get to human-machine interfaces, and we have that now. I mean, we have people that have robotic arms that they can control with their brain, but I'm talking about a different kind of, more like using cortical tissue, and then inside, in conjunction with the computer. I've seen neurons connected to computer processors that were learning to make very simple decisions. But to me, that's where we'll go first. But even that's scary, because when you're talking about, for example, human or even rat cortical tissue, now you don't know what the inputs are, because you're not writing code anymore. And you're talking about tissue that can think things up on its own.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
And we're back here live on the TruthFunders live radio show on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Erick Webb. In discussing our current topic of AI, there's a lot of people that could come into the conversation, such as Ray Kurzweil and stuff like that. Do you follow any of his predictions and the synchronicity idea and all these sorts of things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't read everything he writes, but when I trip across like a long form article, I do, because the guy's brilliant, and the things he predicts tends to happen. So he's a bit of a futurist as well. Yeah,
he's a very smart individual, and I do think he's very much so onto something with his idea of everything exponentially becoming more and more and more and more as it grows, and getting us to the point there. I do think that at least in my lifetime, I will see something to the likes of the synchronicity, where everything kind of, the tech and the bio merge together in such a way that it is indistinguishable between the two. And that's both terrifying and exciting in a lot of ways.
A lot of psychologists don't do what you and I would think of when we think of psychology. They, for example, if you wanted to study color vision in the human, a psychologist does that. And this may be a guy or a woman who has no personality at all and lives in a lab all day long. But if it has to do with perception, it falls in the realm of psychology. And this AI stuff and playing with the cortex and interfacing neurons, that all falls within experimental and biological psychology. So it's certainly in our field, and my students are very interested in it. I try to find as many good sources as I can, but we're really not even quite on the bleeding edge of it yet. Though I think the article that really impressed me the most out of everything that I've read, and it may seem simplistic, was wiring those 4 rat brains together. I don't even have a clue how you'd start. And I used to work with rats. I used to cut their little brains out and section them and look at them and see what neural pathways a drug had. And, that's working at a very gross level. I mean, these guys are working at, individual neurons.
Did you see that article recently about the guy that was going to have the full head transplant onto another body? I think it was in Russia or something like that.
He wants to do it.
Yeah,
how
the hell? Yeah, I don't. That to me is. I mean, it's not really psychology based. It's more from a psychological standpoint. Is this guy completely nuts? Really, is like a good question. But.
No, I don't think so. As long as if he's going to go below maybe the first few cervical vertebrae, then we're dealing with we're dealing with some large nerves which could be connected. A lot of smaller nerves. It's still a lot, but it's going to be doable. No,
so you think this will be something that they actually are widely successful in achieving? Is putting somebody else's head on an entire different body? And there's a lot of questions I think that come into a situation like this because, it begs to ask topics like the soul and things like that. I mean, do you still feel your same passions in your heart if you have a new body? I mean, there's so many questions to be brought up that I don't even know where to start.
My belief is that everything would reside in your brain. You
think it all lives up top?
Yeah, it's just like when you get an implant of some kind. You're still you, but if you transplanted part of a brain, let's say that you have a person who can't hear anymore, and it's 100 years from now, and we're able to transplant the temporal lobes of a person who just died into someone who needs it. Well, now we would have some serious philosophical questions to answer because the identity of that person, we can't say it's the same anymore because we've actually put a lobe of another person's brain into someone's brain. Now, how they would connect those neurons is beyond me. But, there is one thing that's interesting. When you just put new tissue in, sometimes it just seems to know what to do, and it does it on its own. Like in the case of neuroplasticity, if you hurt one part of your brain, other parts of your brain will start to rewire to try to help out that part. So,
it almost self-corrects in a lot of ways.
It's kind of like ants. Any one ant is, obviously dumb as a rock, but you put a couple 100,000 together and they build these marvels, of architecture. Well, neurons are like that. Any given neuron can just fire or not fire. And I don't have a clue why it is it works. That when that's kind of what we're doing right now. I'm not a doctor, but a medical doctor. But, what we're doing with stem tissue is that it can become anything. So if you put it in the right place of the brain, let's say you put it back in the occipital region where vision is, then it'll start to act like that tissue. So it's not like you have to sit there with a soldering iron and hook up, 500 million wires. Some of it just seems to know how to do. So on the one hand, I still think it's bizarrely hard. On the other hand, it may not be as hard as we think because, think about when they reattach a hand to somebody, they will reconnect, the larger nerves, but, the other nerves seem to find their way. And I'm sure a neurologist would be all over me right now, but the bulk of what I've said is correct.
Well, I'm not one, so you're not going to hear anything out of me. Obviously, you know far more about the topic than I do. And one of the things, too, that I think, in getting back to what we were discussing earlier with dreaming and lucid dreaming and different types of sleep waves, a question that I would have, because I honestly don't know anything about the relation between these two, so maybe you'd be able to fill in some more information on that. What is the relation between hypnosis and dream state, and are there direct connections that we can make that show that they're similar in any way, or are they two completely different states of mind? Because hypnosis has its own set of powers and abilities to do things that are far beyond anything I can understand at this point.
Well, you've actually asked a pretty controversial question. There's a fair amount of psychologists that don't believe that hypnosis exists at all.
I'm not one of them. I think that hypnosis is in fact very real and very powerful.
But we have two dimensions. Okay, we have one dimension where we can say that hypnosis is real, and that people are either good candidates or not candidates. And then we have another dimension where we can say that hypnosis may or may not be real, but our candidate or a patient may or may not be The word just left me. And the word I'm looking for says that they'll accept the suggestions you make. Now, I don't, under hypnosis, you won't do anything that you didn't want to do. In the movies, people are hypnotized, and then at a certain cue, they kill somebody. Well, that I don't think any psychologist believes that. If you weren't going to kill a person, then you're not going to do it under hypnosis. But let's say you wanted to quit smoking. Oh, the word I was looking for was suggestible. And you're a highly suggestible candidate. And then you're put in an extremely relaxed state where you're barely awake. Then the noise in your brain settles down. All the things that get in the way of quitting smoking quiet down. And the patient or the client is suggestible. And then you can make suggestions about quitting smoking. A great example of this is my dad. He died in '99. He started smoking when he was about 13 or 14. But in his mid-50s, he went and saw hypnosis. And now Dad smoked 2 packs a day of unfiltered Lucky Strikes. He goes to the hypnosis sensation, and for the rest of his life, he never smokes a cigarette. Doesn't even have withdrawal symptoms. So I thought, well, Dad was a very suggestible candidate, and it worked for him.
No kidding.
So now, I quit smoking about 12 years ago, and it was awful. And yet, he did it after a single session with no discomfort. But what that means is that he badly wanted to quit smoking. So if you combine suggestibility with a client that wants to do a behavior, well, I would call that hypnosis. But when you see people up on stage flapping their arms like chickens, that's not hypnosis. I don't believe it is.
Well, I've seen people who were germaphobes go under hypnosis that couldn't shake hands and couldn't touch bathroom door handles or anything like that have gone under hypnosis and then been able to do such things. And I think that's probably what it comes down to. Is you're exactly right. They don't want to have this infliction, but it's something that they can then relax their brains down to a point where they're really just not focusing on what's bothering them, then they can then move forward with the behavior. So you're probably right in that assessment of the whole thing.
I used what people might call hypnosis when I did therapy, but what I called it was a very deeply relaxed state. Hi, Mark.
Mark, we're there if you can hear us. Guess not. Well, we're going to throw it to a break in a couple minutes anyway. Maybe we'll be able to get Mark back on at that point. But yeah, I think that the hypnosis thing, it's exactly what you said. It's under your own desire and wants to get all of the clutter and the brain activity out of the way. And you want to lose weight, you want to quit smoking, you want to quit caffeine, whatever the thing is that gets you to that point. But you're right. You're not going to see anybody shooting one another. What about past life regression? What do you think about that? Is that a thing?
I'm just not a believer.
Not a believer. Don't think that's something that's a possibility.
No, I'm sorry. I want to make people happy, not unhappy, and I feel like I make people unhappy when I say I'm not, but I'm just not. It doesn't mean I won't be later.
What is it that makes you at this point in time a non-believer? How do these people come up under these extreme relaxed states? Do you think they're making up detailed stories, or what is it that you see as being hard to believe?
Part of it could be real. It could fall under Jungian's collective consciousness, and there is a tiny bit of evidence for ancient memories being coded into our DNA. But in terms of reincarnation and reliving your life, I guess what it comes down to me is that of all the things that we can talk about in the paranormal, I just see the least amount of it. Fortunately, in case histories, we've just caught too many people lying.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, we'll throw it to a break here right now, and we will try and get Mark Schwartz back on the air with us here. He seems to be very dedicated to rejoining us. Erick Williams is our guest. You're listening to the TruthFunders live radio show on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Art Webb, and we'll be back right after this.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
We're back here live on the TruthFunders live radio show here on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Art Webb with Erick Williams and Mark Schwartz. Erick, you were mentioning during the break you wanted to kind of talk about subliminal trains of subliminal. What did you say? Sorry, I forgot the term altogether. But we were talking about hypnosis and AI and all that stuff, and you wanted to connect subliminal thoughts versus those other things.
Subliminal, subliminal suggestions, that kind of crosses over a little bit with hypnosis, except in the case of subliminal, our client is a large audience. They're awake, and the idea is that, sensation occurs when a neuron turns on or off, and perception occurs when your brain makes sense out of it. So when a picture of your car hits your retina, that's sensation. When your brain goes, "Oh, that's my car," that's perception. And what's been researched for a long time is, well, could we have perception just below the level of consciousness, where the person doesn't really consciously realize that they are perceiving something? And again, you have a lot of people who believe in it and those who don't believe. It was tested in the six. Sorry?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that. Like the Manchurian Candidate. A lot was that more hypnotic?
I think that was hypnosis, and then there was a trigger or a cue, an environmental cue. But,
and so there are believers and non-believers that it works. There are other people out there that just don't believe in hypnosis and think that it does not work.
There are psychologists that don't believe in the kind of hypnosis that people are most familiar with, right?
And why is that?
Well, once again, when we test it in the lab, we don't get really great results. Some clients simply want to please the therapist, but people do go into a very deeply relaxed state, and they are suggestible. And we could call that hypnosis. I've done that in therapy with people where the noise level in their head is too loud. And I thought, okay, I'll just get them so relaxed they're barely awake, and then I'll talk to them. And that's not quite subliminal, and it's not quite hypnosis, but it works. Now, back in the 60s, at the drive-in theaters, we need about 25 frames per second to see smooth motion. And just to be sure, they did everything at 30. So what they did at the drive-in movies was they took every 30th frame out and put in one frame that just said, "Buy popcorn." But the sales of popcorn didn't go up. Now, did that prove that subliminal suggestion doesn't work? I don't know, because, again, people aren't going to do what they didn't want to do anyway. If they didn't want to buy popcorn,
and maybe people were already full.
Yeah, but there are ways to test to see if people are seeing these things or hearing these things, and sometimes the results are pretty positive. But, a lot of the stuff you hear about the stores playing music and they have subliminal suggestions, most of that are just myths.
So Erick, is there anything out there, or can I call you Professor? I like to call you Professor because I feel like that sounds so much...
Sure.
So Professor, is there anything sort of paranormal that you wish or that you believe is out there that has not been proven, but your gut tells you that it exists? Or
yes.
Is that... Oh,
that's a good question. That's a great question.
Yes, there is. I believe that thought transfer can and will exist, what we call ESP. And I believe that we'll be able to move our consciousness around, and that might be something that is called out-of-body experiences or astral projections. But I don't see why our brain couldn't do that.
Do you believe we'll be able to upload our consciousness onto a computer disk?
Absolutely. It's going to be a big damn disk, but yes, I don't see why we couldn't.
That's such a terrifying notion to me, because it does suggest that we could, in theory, live on forever. And it's like, to me personally, I can't, this is kind of a radical statement, but it is in all senses of the word true. I can't wait to die. Like, I can't wait to have it, not necessarily like I don't want to walk out the door tomorrow and be hit by a bus and be dead. But I think that life is part of a journey, and there is a beginning and there is an end. And
right.
the idea of like just never being able to end it, to me, is terrifying. I want there to be an end at some point.
But it's going to be a choice. I mean, there are really, really smart scientists out there that are saying that we're within 100 years of immortality because we should be able to upload our memories and consciousness and just put it into another body. But it would always be a choice. You could just die and not do it.
Well, that would be, the future. I'm sure there's a sci-fi movie out there that explores this notion of taking your brain, putting it onto a disk or a hard drive or, transferring it, and then in the meantime making a clone of your own body so that when you die, your brain and disk is transferred to the younger version of yourself, and you're still able to keep going on.
No thanks.
100 years ago, cloning a sheep would have been the height of science fantasy and silliness, but now we do it. So, 100 years from now, every cell in your body has a whole you in it. Now, fortunately, when you skin your knee and you need to make new knee skin, there's RNA, there's messenger RNA that says just make knee skin, don't make a whole new stick out of my knee. But you can take those cells, you can wash away that RNA, and then you got everything you need to make whatever it is. I'm pretty sure they're going to make this woolly mammoth. If it seems like they have viable DNA. All they have to do is take whatever tissue it came from and clean out the material that would tell it to just be an eyelash or a toenail or something.
Right. Can you believe that they're actually going to do Jurassic Park? It's essentially the same thing. They're going to actually clone a woolly mammoth.
Well, it doesn't strike me as I'm not in that field, but it doesn't strike me as something that's that difficult.
Plus the amazing things they're doing with 3D printers these days. You can only imagine how much further that's going to go. They're making hearts and organs, they're printing them, and then they're going to be able to use them within, within people's body. Like they're not going to in 20 years from now, they might not need hearts from people's bodies. They'll be able to print a new heart and put that into someone's body if they need a heart transplant.
Yeah, all you need is a frame, like a frame of a kidney. And if you put the right kind of tissue on it, like stem cell tissue, it just, again, like we were talking about earlier, it just seems to know what to do. And it makes a kidney.
Yeah, so Neutron, just to say what we're all talking about here, it says, yes, replicating and keeping memory forever living. Very occultic IMHO. What about our souls that seek many experiences, not one only, and to do so needs life and death?
Well, now see, that's I'm Catholic. The religious part of me says, well, how would you copy a soul? And I don't have an answer for that.
That's something that
you might copy a machine-like soulless person. So, yeah, good for you, Neutron. That's an excellent point.
Yeah. And I agree with him, by the way, or her, whatever it is. But yeah, that's exactly my point. Is like life and death is part of the entire journey in the cycle. And who knows? Maybe we will go to clone the first person, and it just won't work, and that will be that.
Or you'll have an organic machine.
Yeah, and that's essentially what that will be.
Terminator.
In that case, you're not you. You're not a clone. You're not you. You're an organic machine. You are you're a digital copy, for all intents and purposes.
If a lot of you is your soul, or what we call a soul, I don't know how we're going to save that kind of information. But to save information, that neurons produce, that should be doable. But the rest of it gets a little fuzzy.
Definitely.
Sure. Maybe the soul is in the brain, and then you could transfer it over. Who knows? But now we're speculating. We're in speculation mode, which is okay. I think it's fun to speculate with a psychologist. Now, Eric, there's a lot of really cool stuff with psychology, and that sort of mapping the brain and reading a lot into what human behavior is. But there is sort of this line between studying like theory of I guess, how should I put this? There's psychology, and then there's the theory of human existence, and there's a good word for it. It's just slipping. It's on the tip of my tongue. But we sort of cross over. Do you find that there's a lot of crossover between?
Yes, and it's troublesome.
Yeah, so it is troublesome. So you like to look at things sort of in two separate plates, not take both of those plates and put them into one.
Like I did at the beginning of the program, where I said, we would have a balloon marked paranormal and blow up a balloon marked psychology and let them touch. I'm interested in that point where they touch, but I'm not interested in making the two balloons the same.
Gotcha.
Because, and that's because of my personal limitations. There may be brilliant people out there that can do it, but I can't.
Well, hey, man, I don't want to have my pumpkin pie on the same plate as my turkey during Thanksgiving either. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
But I'm amazed at, just what we've done in the past 50 years and certainly in the last 100 years. And, we haven't had psychology that long, just barely since the late 1800s. And even then it was laughed at.
It's going to be an exciting next 50, 100 years, that's for sure.
Yeah, I wish I were going to be here for it.
There was something that you had mentioned in our last episode of TruthFunders Radio that you visited, which was that in all the new textbooks, they had officially taken out parapsychology as one of the chapters or one of the sections in psychology classrooms. So has there been any development on that? Has there been any feedback, or have people sort of rebelled against that? Has there been any chatter online, or is it dead? Like, do you see that it's dead? Because
it's dead for now.
It is dead for now because you said that kids in the classroom are interested in this.
They are.
Do you think there's a reason why they took out parapsychology? Do you think there's some ulterior motive or conspiracy theory about it?
No, I think they took it out is because, when you write a textbook, every statement of fact you make has to be backed up by some piece of research. That's why the reference section's almost as big as the book. And I read an article once. The article was specifically on why are there no parapsychology programs, and the author said, to put it succinctly, nothing paranormal has ever happened in a lab. We've tried and tried and tried, and we get nothing. But it does not mean that people have stopped working on it. There are still psychologists studying paranormal, but they're doing it on their own in small groups. You certainly can't get a degree in it. There's still the odd laboratory here and there, but these are often funded by the psychologists themselves, or they steal a little piece of funding from over here, but you're not going to apply to NIH and get funding. You're not likely to get funding for paranormal.
So what would your argument be in order to keep parapsychology in the textbooks? Or if you were trying to get a grant, I guess you wouldn't try to get a grant because that could ruin your reputation, quote unquote. But if you had to argue in order to get a grant or to keep it in the textbooks, what would you say, or what would your argument be?
Well, my own personal argument, and I don't know how well this would go down with publishers, is that if you can imagine it, it's probably possible. And we should explore everything, because while this seems unlikely, at some point we worked on it, and our methodology might simply have been wrong, and we shouldn't stop, because 100 years from now, 200 years from now, some of these things are going to be run of the mill, and we're going to look back and say, "Oh, we shouldn't have pulled it out of the textbooks." But I have absolutely no input in textbooks. Like, I review them sometimes, provide feedback, but not in terms of, like putting a whole, and that was never a chapter. It was a few pages in a chapter.
And do you have any special day in your class where you teach one day of parapsychology, or just talk about it, or the idea about it?
I always fit it in towards the end when we talk about abnormal psychology. And usually because it intersects. Some people that are very, very disordered have bizarre gifts, and how do you explain that? And then that kind of leads us into a discussion.
Oh, that's a whole other thing.
Paranormal stuff.
No.
There's a lot with people that are what's the autistic? They say that people who are autistic, some of them can have really incredible gifts.
Almost every autistic person I worked with had some slight, at least, savant ability, but some of them had incredible abilities.
And like what?
Well,
what
I was going to say, what's some specific examples of the incredible ones?
One young man, he's young to me, he's in his early 20s. He's a human MapQuest. And he just started with Frederick County where we live, but he's probably out a diameter of thousands of miles. You can give him any 2 points and he'll tell you how to get there. And he'll also tell you all the buildings you'll pass and what year they were constructed. And he'll do that as fast as you answer the question. And then another one does complex math in his head. A third one, you give him any date in history, he'll tell you what day of the week it was before like when I told him I was born January 1st, 1958, the 8th was still in the air when he said Wednesday. How do you explain that? And then I'm getting ready to meet with a student when the semester's over. She wanted to write her paper on synesthesia, and I said, why? And she says, because I have some of that. Well, I have never met a student who's had synesthesia. So
I don't even know what that is.
I'm going to record our sessions, and I'm very excited.
What that is. I don't even know what that is.
It's when synesthesia is when senses get commingled. So a person there's this kid that just did 21,000 units of pi, but to him it's just watching a train go by, and each car is a different color, and each color is a different number. So there's two things going on. First of all, his brain is using color to do numbers. But second of all, something's calculating pi, and he can't tell you. So, people with synesthesia might taste colors. They might hear colors. So their senses get commingled, or they flip-flop. I was reading about a synesthetic person who a certain sound to him tastes like, I'm going to be silly, when he hears a sound, it tastes like he's eating cat poop. So he has to make sure he never hears that sound or he gags.
That's so weird.
Because
you can experience that yourself in some ways, and maybe this is totally not right, but there is a fruit, and I think it's from the jungles of the Amazon. It's called a superfruit, and what it does is you eat it, and it changes your perception of what taste is in your mouth.
So it's from LSD. I've had it before. It's good stuff.
So things that are sweet are actually completely sour. Things that are sour are completely sweet. And I actually ordered this stuff from the internet. Yeah. And I got it. I got it for a Halloween party. I thought it would be really fun if everyone tried this superfruit. So everybody, took some of this stuff, and I laid out on the table chocolate and coffee and just different things that you could try. And sure enough, you're expecting to get something completely sour with this lemon, and it was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. Yeah.
So it somehow momentarily confuses the neurons in your tongue. And it acts as agonists in some places and antagonists. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, that certainly makes sense. I now I want to try it.
Yeah, so do I. Mark, what the hell was it called?
So okay, I'll put it on Facebook, but it was it's called a superfruit. I believe that was what it was called, and you can get these little pills, and you bite them and chew them, and they it coats your tongue, and you have
for this. How long?
And it lasts for about maybe 10 or 15 minutes. That's it, and then it dissolves. And how they discovered it was they were looking for something like sugar. That they could substitute instead of sugar, because it was back in the days when they were creating NutraSweet and Equal and things like that. And so they came upon this fruit and they used it, and they decided to not use it because it had this effect. But yeah, it's incredible. It's a lot of fun too, just for a gag, or you can give it to a friend and tell them to try it and just freak them out.
Give them a piece of chocolate or something. I'm going to look this up. This is really cool.
Yeah, you could probably do some sort of psychological experiment on it too. Just trying to figure out, how it reacts.
And how it reacts when you give people psychedelic mushrooms as well would also probably be a good study.
When you take psychoactive things like the hallucinogens, you certainly temporarily induce synesthesia.
Yes, absolutely. I would as a first-hand experiencer, I would say that is absolutely true.
But other people, this is their life. For some of them, it's pleasant. For some of them, they say it's quite unpleasant.
I put the link to it on Amazon in the chat room. So if everybody goes to the chat room right now, you can go ahead and click on it.
How much did it cost?
$10.
That's not bad.
Not bad.
No, not bad. And there was an article about it in the New York Times as well, which is pretty cool. And I'll go ahead and post that in the chat room.
And
as
it's
well.
safe. It is safe. Yes, you're not getting.
Yeah, it's called the miracle fruit. Is what it's called. The M-berry.
I'm an M-berry, huh?
I guess it's called Sinsapalum dulcificum. That's the scientific name for it.
Does it have any bad side effects?
No bad side effect.
Okay.
Yep, it was great. They say it temporarily rewires. So, Carrie Dashow dropped a large dollop of lemon sorbet into a glass Guinness, stirred it, drank it, and proclaimed it tasted like a chocolate shake. So that was something that I noticed too. I drank a beer and it tasted like chocolate. So weird. If you ever are trying to guzzle beer, it's a good way to eat the superfruit, and then you can pound some beer and it will taste like chocolate.
Is it uniform? Will everyone that eats a lemon taste chocolate, or does it vary from person to person?
I think it's fairly uniform. I'm pretty sure it's pretty uniform.
Pretty much same across the board.
Yeah, everyone sort of has the same.
We should try.
effect.
You know what we should do is we should order a bunch of it, including with Eric, and then once we all get the delivery in a few weeks, come back and do it live on the air together. We should set up a whole.
I'd do it.
Taste experiment, and then we can decide in advance what we want to have ready to go, and then we should all do it on the air.
Oh yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
I agree.
All right, well, it's a date.
But in that case, you're simply rewiring a single sense as opposed to sort of conflating them.
Well, there's also things like, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are, Eric, with these sorts of things, but it's, oh God, what the hell is it called? It's not sativa. It's
Stevia?
Sativa. Yeah, the crap that you can like smoke, and it takes you on a very, very intense.
Oh, salvia.
Salvia. That's what I'm looking for.
I've not heard of that.
Oh, you've never heard of salvia? Okay, this is something you should look into. It basically is a organic substance that you can smoke, essentially, and it will take you on a 90-second to roughly 3-minute, very, very intense psychedelic trip.
I'm a little phobic of hallucinating.
Well, it's definitely something that people have. I mean, kids. It's legal. You can buy this over the counter. It's totally accessible, and there's a never-ending plethora of YouTube videos of kids that try smoking this stuff and end up experiencing very weird sense swaps in the sense that we're talking about right now. That I think is also along the same lines of discussion, but in a much more extreme way. With Mark's superfruit, I don't think that you're transferring your consciousness to a different plane like you might be with the salvia, but same type of stuff.
By the way, Carol in the chat room just pointed out that on the air tastes good, and are cool. Yeah, so I think that's a compliment. We taste good.
Yeah, we could do an on-air taste test.
I see what she's making a topical joke is what she's doing. She's saying that listening to us tastes very nicely. Yes, this is a tasty radio show. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
There. Always there.
So before we get going, I know we're coming close to the end of the show now. I want everybody to really quickly go to www.truthfunders.com, and on the front page you will see Erick's Truth Funders project, and it's still going. You know, he started it a couple months ago, and he's raised a little bit of money. I think he's up to close to $200 now. Yep. And his goal is not that big. I think it's like $1,300, something along those lines. Yeah. So if everybody that's listening to the show or downloads the podcast, donates $5, donates $10, you know, literally if everyone who listened to this show donated $5, he would completely be on his way and be able to do this test, and we could bring him back on because he is a friend of the show, because he is a friend of IRN now and has a show. He could talk about the project and the results that he's getting, and not only that, we talked about Zener cards and how you can do some really cool experiments with them, trying to get other people to guess what's on the card, and they're actually branded special Zener cards for psychology experiments.
They're about $10 on Amazon.
Yeah, and so if you donate to his project, it's $25 for the donation. You can get Zener cards. So you could spend $10 on Amazon and get your own pack, but if you spend $25, you're actually donating to a great cause and you're helping out Erick. And it's something we all believe in. It's trying to figure out, does ESP exist? And you heard him here on the show. They're getting rid of all the stuff from the textbooks. Parapsychology is going the wayside. So it's up to us as a community to kind of keep it going and show that we have interest in it. So I beg all of you in the listening public, listening to Truth Funders Radio, to please check out his project. It's so easy to go there. It's so easy to donate, and it's on the front page. You can't miss it. ESP. Very, very front page. So did you want to say anything about your project? And do you ever mention your project on your radio show, Erick?
No, I haven't yet. I'm going to. And maybe when you are let's see, you guys are coming on this Sunday?
Yeah, we'd be happy. To be on the show.
I wasn't sure if we picked a date, but that might be a good time. But I do talk about to my students a lot. They're very excited about it. And they want more experiments, but I need a little more equipment to because it needs to be scientific. I need to rule out things that could better explain the effect.
And do you ever do your students ever listen to the show?
Yes, they do, because especially my social psych students, It
would actually be a neat way to incorporate your class into a more expanded, way of teaching by having them listen to the show each week.
Did you enter a haunted house? You sound very echoey, Art.
Yeah, you do.
I'm at a church, actually.
All right. So yeah, Erick, I think Art was asking, it's a good way to incorporate this stuff into your classroom. Do you ever, so you do talk about it to the students?
I do talk about the show in class because they usually bring it up. I've showed them my site. I've showed them TruthFunders' site. I've explained what TruthFunders does.
That's rad.
I do that every semester. I have about 200 students a semester and about 100 in the summer. So that's 500 people a year getting exposed to it.
That's so fantastic. I'm so glad to hear it. And, we can't thank you enough. And we're so proud and so happy that you have a show on the Inception Radio Network.
Oh, thank you.
They're really great.
I owe that to you.
Yeah, well, you owe it to yourself. You're the one who did it and pitched it. And when I heard about it, I was just, I was all smiles. I thought that's great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we need to wrap up here. And thank you so much for Erick for coming on this week. And we definitely want to do our taste test at some point here. So we'll make a point to make that happen at some point. My name is Art Webb from Mark Schwartz. Mark, do you got anything you want to add? Because we're at the very end of the clock here. So
no, just ready to rock. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff at TruthFunders. And then, visit our website and help out some of the people creating some projects.
We are out of time for this week. Thank you so much, Erick Williams. TruthFunders.com. My name is Art Webb for Mark Schwartz. We will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.